On her birthday, my girlfriend openly expressed gratitude to her former partner for setting a high standard. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Then she looked my way and added, "And thanks to him as well, I suppose." I remained seated without a word. 2 days afterward, she discovered the consequences of provoking a man beyond his limits. The venue was packed with strangers I had never met, all chuckling and sipping wine that I had funded. It was my girlfriend Charlotte's 30th birthday celebration, an occasion she had organized for months. The motif was classic Hollywood glamour, and she embodied the role of the leading lady flawlessly. I was merely part of the backdrop, the fellow ensuring the food trays were replenished and the sparkling drinks continued to pour. The highlight of the night was the speech. Charlotte positioned herself in the middle of the space, raising her glass aloft. Her closest companion, a lady named Becca who always regarded me as if I were an unwanted stain on her footwear, stood nearby, glowing with pride. "I simply want to thank everyone for attending," Charlotte started, her tone rehearsed and confident. "Reaching 30 is a major achievement, and I wouldn't be the person I am now without the incredible individuals in my world." She listed them one by one, her encouraging parents, her fantastic circle of friends. Then she halted for emphasis, her gaze sweeping the room until it settled on a striking, self-satisfied man toward the rear. "And I must offer a particular acknowledgement to my wonderful acquaintance Derek," she continued, her words laced with feeling. "My previous boyfriend, indeed, but also the individual who genuinely showed me what I merit in a relationship. He elevated the expectations for what a companion ought to provide, and I will always appreciate the period we shared." The gathering burst into cheers, with hands clapping and a few even letting out whistles. Derek, the former flame, offered a polite nod in response. It was a touching, heartfelt scene, an ideal display of social finesse. As the cheers faded, Charlotte's gaze briefly shifted to me, positioned near the drink station. It came across as a secondary notion, a quick belittling look. "And thanks to him too, I guess," she remarked with a casual flick of her wrist toward my spot. Several of her pals giggled softly. The intent was unmistakable, executed with the accuracy of a targeted assault before 50 onlookers. Derek represented the benchmark. I was the minor detail. The person adequate for the moment but not worthy of a proper mention by name. I showed no response. I didn't wince. I simply stayed there, my face neutral, and took a deliberate swallow of my beverage. Internally, though, my thoughts were already accelerating. A trigger had been activated. In my profession, you avoid emotional reactions when faced with an assault. You become calculated. Charlotte had just executed an unexpected, open challenge to my dignity. She viewed it as a dominance maneuver in social circles. She had no clue she had initiated conflict with a specialist in orchestrating political drives. The contest period had officially started. To clarify, I'm not a pushover. I refuse to be manipulated. I'm a strategist for election efforts. My role involves securing triumphs. I handle intricate, frequently imperfect contenders and craft a storyline around them that results in success. I conduct rival analysis, oversee communication, dominate the news flow, and pinpoint and capitalize on the vulnerabilities of adversaries. My existence revolves around tactics, public image, and the relentless implementation of a blueprint. I encountered Charlotte 8 months prior. I had recently wrapped up the most grueling operation of my career, a triumphant yet exhausting bid for a Senate seat that had drained me entirely. I was in what I term a downtime phase. I required a respite from the intense arena of governmental contests. I sought something straightforward. Charlotte fit that description. She was attractive, enjoyable, and without complications. I recognized her traits immediately. Her existence was supported by a modest inheritance and a string of initiatives that rarely materialized. She remained fixated on her past partner Derek, a figure from established wealth who personified the seamless accomplishment she desired. I noticed every warning sign, her frequent references to influential names, her relaxed pursuit of luxuries, her craving for widespread approval. But I wasn't seeking a lifelong companion. I wanted a brief diversion, a low-pressure side endeavor while I recovered my career energy. I was upfront with her from the start. I explained I wasn't interested in anything committed, that I was simply regrouping after a taxing roll. She consented. The setup was basic. I supplied the reliability and comfort she relished, and she offered the light-hearted, relaxed partnership I required. It was a clearly agreed-upon temporary agreement. The issue arose when she began treating the setup as a lasting role, and her conduct, as evidenced at her birthday event, had turned intolerable. She hadn't merely offended me. She had openly labeled me as lesser. In the realm of political drives, that's a storyline you must eliminate before it spreads. So as I lingered there amid the resuming festivities, I didn't experience pain. I sensed the thrilling buzz of a fresh operation launching. My rival? The Charlotte-Derek coalition. My goal, an absolute and overwhelming win. That evening, once the final attendee departed and Charlotte was unconscious in bed, I entered my study and outlined the strategy document. Update 1. A strong Operation B. Begins with thorough groundwork and analysis. You can't overcome a foe you don't comprehend. Thus, for the initial 48 hours following the gathering, I transformed into a solo investigation unit. My focus points were Charlotte and her revered former partner, Derek. I commenced with Charlotte. I possessed much of the necessary information already. Over the past 8 months, I had been the main provider of her optional spending. I reviewed my bank records, carefully recording each transaction. The luxury garments, the $500 meals with Becca, the wellness retreats, the short getaways. I wasn't only monitoring the funds, I was charting her complete way-of-life network. I understood her financiers, myself, her primary backers, her shallow acquaintances, and her central theme, an existence of unearned opulence. Next, I shifted to Derek. He lingered as the shadow in our connection, the ideal she repeatedly measured me against. His outward persona was impeccable. He led a trendy tech venture, operated a classic roadster, and his social media was a polished collection of his ideal existence. Yet in my field, you discover that the more polished the facade, the deeper the hidden flaws. I engaged a contractor, a specialist in online investigations whom I employ for unearthing scandals on election rivals. I supplied him with Derek's identity and his firm's title. I avoided anything unlawful. I merely sought a precise view of his economic and career truth. As my investigator worked, I launched stage 1 of my personal scheme, storyline disruption. Charlotte remained completely oblivious. She assumed I had simply been moody at her event. She attempted to ease tensions the following day. "You were so reserved last night," she said, sulking. "You didn't even compliment my appearance." I merely stated I was fatigued. I allowed her to think her minor dominance tactic had succeeded, that I was the one retreating. My opening action was understated. One of the foundations of Charlotte's prestige was a philanthropic board she served on. It involved a major elegant fundraiser held annually. She performed no actual tasks, she simply enjoyed her name on the stationery. I, conversely, had contributed a substantial sum to the organization under my own name several months earlier, a detail she adored boasting about. I contacted the chief of the planning group, a contact from my professional network. I noted that owing to some asset adjustments, I had to withdraw my contribution for the cycle. I was courteous, regretful, and nonspecific. I anticipated the contact would lead to another, from the group leader to Charlotte, inquiring about the status with her remarkably charitable partner. The reaction was swift. Charlotte challenged me that night, her tone trembling with fury. "What have you done?" she demanded. "Cynthia from the board reached out. She mentioned you retracted your pledge. You're embarrassing me." "It was a professional choice, Charlotte," I responded evenly, without glancing from my screen. "Economic factors have shifted. I'm redirecting my resources." "This isn't about resources," she yelled. "This concerns my standing. You acted out of spite for my comments at the party." "Your comments at the party were merely information," I answered, at last meeting her gaze. "They assisted me in reassessing the value of my commitments. The fundraiser, it appears, is a poor commitment." This was a deliberate step. I was communicating in the sole terms she grasped, the terms of societal influence and prestige. I had just diminished her chief resource. As she recovered from that blow, my investigator delivered the treasure I anticipated. Derek's tech firm, Innovate Next, was entirely fraudulent. It lacked any offering, no income, and was depleting funds rapidly. Its sole backing originated from a few initial backers, primarily associates of his affluent dad, and various costly personal debts. Derek wasn't a visionary in technology, he was an heir experimenting with business using others' capital. The dossier also included another gem. Derek's classic roadster, the one he flaunted everywhere? It was rented. A pricey rental co-guaranteed by his father. And he was overdue by 2 payments. This formed the basis of my rival's image, a deception. And I was set to reveal it. Update 2. The following stage of the operation involved transforming the rival analysis into a tool. An effective strategist doesn't merely disclose harmful details, they construct a tale around it. They develop an account that audiences can grasp and that outlets will spread. My intended viewers weren't the masses. It was the tight-knit community of financiers and elites that Derek and Charlotte navigated. I set up a fresh, untraceable email account. From that account, I composed a document. It was styled in the neutral, factual manner of a funding evaluation. The header read, "An unrequested assessment report on Innovate Next." The document was a precision takedown in business terms. It detailed, with painful specificity, the firm's monetary state. It covered their expenditure pace, absence of a functional item, and a forecast indicating bankruptcy within under 6 months. It avoided direct claims. It simply laid out the evidence. The closing section listed verifiable documents revealing Derek's pattern of unsuccessful ventures. All silently financed and then concealed by his father. I dispatched this document to 3 recipients: Derek's dad, the primary backer in his venture, a figure renowned for his cutthroat dealings, and a prominent regional finance reporter who relished tales of collapsing startups. As that electronic device activated, I proceeded to erode Charlotte's leftover foundations. Her closest ally, Becca, was a vital consultant in her pattern of demands. Becca was employed as a style advisor at an upscale retailer. Her position relied on her image and her customer base. I had overheard their discussions enough to know Becca routinely took items from the shop for weekends and returned them come Monday. It was a widespread, though dishonest, habit. I also knew she assisted Charlotte in similar actions, applying her staff reduction to acquire costly ensembles that Charlotte would don once for a photo share and then refund. I placed another nameless tip, this time to the retailer's central security line. I alerted them that a worker at their main location was operating an elaborate refund scam, resulting in significant losses. I gave Becca's details and recommended examining camera records and stock data for the last half year, focusing on premium pieces refunded early in the week. With both key rivals addressed, I simply needed to let the process unfold. The initial blast originated from Derek's side. The finance reporter published an article days later, a harsh critique of Innovate Next, labeling it a personal indulgence and an example of generational overconfidence. The main backer, enraged at the deception, withdrew support and warned of legal action. Derek's father, shamed publicly, at last severed ties with his son. Derek, desperate, contacted Charlotte, likely seeking aid, but Charlotte faced her own turmoil. Becca had lost her position. The retailer had indeed checked the recordings and uncovered extensive proof. She was dismissed, and the company was pursuing criminal charges for larceny. Becca, in her frenzy, promptly pointed fingers at Charlotte, informing the retailer that Charlotte had coerced her. The pair were now engaged in a fierce conflict, each claiming the other orchestrated it. Charlotte's realm was collapsing. Her societal position vanished, her top confidant turned foe, and her ideal former partner exposed as a fake. She was in decline, and she still hadn't identified me as the one who severed her safety line. She approached me a week after the Derek article appeared. She was weeping. Her entire existence was unraveling. Derek had ended contact, claiming he needed to address his issues and that she hindered him. Becca was menacing legal steps. She had become an outcast. "I don't comprehend what's occurring," she cried, perched on the corner of our sofa. "My sofa. It appears you're facing some economic instability," I remarked, my tone steady. She gazed at me, her expression bewildered. "May I remain here temporarily?" she pleaded, her voice faint. "I lack alternatives." "No," I replied. "Our agreement has concluded. You must seek a new opportunity." I presented her with a container. "I took the initiative to gather some of your belongings." She was now independent. Final update: it has been a month since I began the operation. Mel, the ultimate outcomes are confirmed, and it was a decisive triumph. After I instructed her to depart, Charlotte suffered a total breakdown. She possessed no funds, no allies, and no future paths. Her parents, who had perpetually indulged her, were managing the monetary and reputational damage from Derek's exposure and couldn't maintain her preferred lifestyle. She attempted to start a defamation effort against me. She and the remnants of her group tried to portray me as a harsh, unfeeling figure who deserted her during crisis. But they lacked a stage. Their networks were destroyed. And crucially, I directed the storyline. I performed one last action. I provided a private, background discussion to the same finance reporter who had unmasked Derek. I presented it as the account of an accomplished, discreet individual targeted by ambitious climbers, only to reveal a network of scams and trickery. I avoided naming Charlotte, but the specifics were so pointed that insiders recognized the parties. The piece depicted me as the wronged party who wisely removed himself from a toxic scenario. It was the ideal rebuttal and shielded me from her assaults. 2 days post-publication, Charlotte arrived at my entrance. She wasn't furious now. She was shattered. She was hysterical, pleading for reconciliation, insisting she had erred gravely. I allowed her to speak fully. When finished, I simply regarded her. "You haven't erred, Charlotte," I stated. "You've executed a poor operation. Your approach was defective, your communication erratic, and your main allies undependable. You selected the incorrect adversary." She stared blankly, the ultimate, terrifying awareness emerging in her expression. "This was your doing," she murmured. "Everything. The article, Derek, Becca, it was all orchestrated by you." "I oversee operations," I said, my tone as detached and even as a survey result. "You openly challenged my integrity. I viewed it as a contribution to my own effort. I utilized your challenge to start a counterattack. You believed we shared a partnership. We were in a contest. And I never, ever fail." I shut the door. That marked the final occasion I encountered her. I learned from a shared contact that she relocated to her parents' home. Her inheritance depleted, and she's currently employed as a front desk coordinator at a dental clinic. Derek faces numerous claims from his ex-backers. Becca continues navigating the judicial fallout from her refund violations. My retaliation wasn't through shouting or outbursts. It involved tactics. It meant applying my professional skills to my private affairs. She perceived me as a dull, dependable supporter. A side note in her fabulous narrative. She overlooked that the unassuming figure at the rear is frequently the one directing the whole production. She assumed she was the contender. She never grasped she was merely the rival. And the rival never had an opportunity.